What happens when the world's most adored football star faces television's most relentless interviewer? When polished PR meets ruthless journalism? When Cristiano Ronaldo, Portugal's golden boy, sits across from Oprah Winfrey on what he thought would be a celebration, only to experience the most humiliating 30 minutes of his life? You're about to witness it unfold. The afternoon sun gently poured through the towering windows of Harpo Studios in Chicago, casting long shadows across the stage where one of the most jaw-dropping interviews in television history was about to take place. The building buzzed with an unusual energy. Security was tighter than usual. Non-disclosure agreements had been handed out to every crew member, and even the catering staff had been sworn to secrecy about the day's special guest. Cristiano Ronaldo, the Portuguese superstar, sat in the luxurious green room, adjusting his perfectly tailored navy suit for the third time in the past 10 minutes. The fabric was Italian, the cut immaculate, and his shirt, a crisp white with a subtle texture, radiated elegance. Every detail had been meticulously planned to project success and respectability. His publicist, Sarah Mitchell, a sharp-tongued American who had built her career managing crises for Hollywood's A-listers, paced nervously while scrolling through her phone. A deep sense of tension hung in the air, more so than during their usual media appearances. "Everything's set for today, Cristiano," she said, though her voice carried an unease that hadn't been there before. "It's standard Oprah format. She'll ask about your journey from Madeira to Manchester, maybe touch on the Champions League finals, and perhaps talk about your charity work. Simple stuff. Easy questions." But even as she spoke, Sarah's phone buzzed again, displaying ominous messages from her media contacts. One stood out, a text from a rival publicist. "Sorry about today. Hope your client survives it." Ronaldo's brow furrowed. This wasn't like any interview he had prepared for. In his illustrious career, he had done hundreds of interviews, intimate sit-downs with UEFA officials, massive press conferences at global tournaments. He was no stranger to difficult questions about his tactics, his dedication, and the pressure of representing his country. Yet this felt different. "Why won't they tell us who's in the audience?" Ronaldo asked, his Portuguese accent clear despite his years in Europe. Sarah stopped pacing and looked at him, her expression serious. "Sometimes Oprah likes to surprise her guests," she explained. "It's all for the sake of authenticity. She did that reunion show once. Same idea." Ronaldo wasn't convinced. "Something feels off, Sarah. The way the producer looked at me. The crew keeps staring. Even the makeup artist looked nervous. As if on cue." Sarah's phone buzzed once more. This time, the message read, "Tell Cristiano to lawyer up now." Still, Ronaldo was confident. He was Cristiano Ronaldo, after all. He had conquered the greatest football stadiums in Europe, scored goals that made entire nations roar with pride, and faced down the toughest defenders in the Champions League. How could one interview be so difficult? Meanwhile, 3 floors above, Oprah Winfrey sat in her private office, surrounded by piles of documents, photos, and legal files. Her research team had spent the past 6 months investigating what they referred to as the Ronaldo Project. This deep dive into the footballer's empire had uncovered a web of corruption, so shocking that even Oprah's seasoned investigative producers had been taken aback. The evidence was damning. Bank records from offshore accounts showed systematic fund diversions. Whistleblowers detailed abusive working conditions. Real estate deals had displaced entire families through legal intimidation. And perhaps most damning of all, audio recordings from inside Ronaldo's circle that could obliterate everything the world had come to believe about the beloved footballer. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" Oprah asked her longtime producer, Michael Rodriguez. He was flipping through the pages of the final report, his hands shaking. In his 2 decades of producing television, he had never encountered something this devastating. Oprah stood up and walked toward the window, her voice heavy with the weight of the decision ahead. "Michael, I've built my career on giving people the chance to tell their truth. But what happens when the truth is built on lies? What happens when we have to hold someone accountable for the pain they've caused? Today, we find out." The audience had already gathered, 300 of them, all waiting for Ronaldo to make his entrance. As he walked onto the stage, his trained eyes immediately noticed something was off about the crowd. Instead of the usual Oprah demographic middle-aged American women and celebrity watchers, the audience was diverse, a mix of Portuguese men, young women, journalists, and people who looked like they came from hard-working backgrounds. Cristiano Ronaldo, the Portuguese legend, Oprah announced with her signature warmth, embracing him as the cameras clicked. But as they walked toward their chairs, Ronaldo caught something in Oprah's eyes, something cold, something distant, and it sent a chill down his spine. The applause echoed throughout the studio, but it felt different. Some sections were genuinely excited, but others clapped half-heartedly, as if they were simply fulfilling an obligation. A few people didn't clap at all, just stared at him, their faces unreadable. "It's a pleasure to have you here, Cristiano," Oprah began, settling into her chair with the kind of grace only years of experience could bring. Her voice was warm, but there was an underlying formality to it, almost like a prosecutor preparing for a cross-examination. "You know, I've been doing this show for decades, and rarely do I come across someone whose story seems almost too perfect to be true." Ronaldo smiled, his usual confidence returning. "Well, Oprah, I've been very lucky. From Madeira to Manchester, it's been an incredible journey. I still can't quite believe it sometimes." "Yes, let's talk about that journey," Oprah replied, her eyes narrowing slightly as she reached for her first question. "You've become a symbol of hope for Portugal, for the world. You're an inspiration to millions. But with that kind of adoration comes a tremendous responsibility, doesn't it?" "It does," Ronaldo answered, his tone earnest. "I take it very seriously. I try to use my platform to show people that anything is possible if you work hard and stay true to your values. It's a responsibility I embrace." Oprah nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. "Dreams can come true, yes, but sometimes, Cristiano, the dream we sell the world isn't quite the reality we live, is it?" The first crack in Ronaldo's composure appeared. His practiced smile faltered for just a second, but it was enough to be noticed. He shifted in his chair, his demeanor subtly changing. "Sorry, I don't understand what you mean," he replied, his voice slightly more guarded now. "Oh, I think you do." Oprah's voice remained conversational, but there was a chilling edge to it. "See, Cristiano, when someone becomes as beloved as you have, when children wear your jersey to bed, when parents name their sons after you, when entire communities celebrate your success like it's their own, I think we owe them the truth. Don't you?" The audience grew completely silent, the tension palpable. Ronaldo, still in shock, slowly nodded. "Of course," he said carefully. "I've always tried to be honest with my fans, to be authentic in everything I do. Have you?" Oprah asked, the question hanging in the air like a challenge. Oprah opened a folder that seemed to materialize out of nowhere, as if prepared for this moment. "Let's start with something that should be easy," she said. "Your foundation, the Cristiano Ronaldo Foundation, does beautiful work helping children in need. The marketing materials are very moving, filled with pictures of you with children in hospitals, building schools in remote areas. But can you tell us exactly how much of the money donated actually reaches these children?" Ronaldo felt a lump form in his throat. This wasn't what he had prepared for. "We work very hard to make sure every penny goes where it's supposed to. Our foundation operates with full transparency, and we do everything by the book," he replied, his voice tight with discomfort. Oprah didn't flinch. "That's interesting phrasing. Full transparency and maximum impact," she said smoothly, "because according to the financial records we've obtained through official channels, less than 30% of donated funds actually reach the programs you advertise. The rest, well, that's a fascinating story of creative accounting." The murmurs in the audience grew louder. Ronaldo could feel the sweat building on his forehead. Despite the cool air conditioning in the studio, his publicist, who had been watching from the wings, frantically typed on her phone, trying to get in touch with anyone. "I think there's been some misunderstanding," Ronaldo stammered, his usual poise slipping. His English suddenly became more accented, the tension creeping into his words. "The foundation operates with full transparency. Every dollar is accounted for. We follow international standards." Oprah was unfazed. "Mohammed, I have someone here today who knows exactly where that money went. Ahmed Hassan, would you please stand up?" Ronaldo's face drained of color as a man in his 50s, thin and dressed in a faded brown suit, slowly stood from the third row. As soon as Ronaldo laid eyes on him, recognition hit him like a punch to the stomach. "Ahmed worked for your foundation for 2 years as a financial coordinator," Oprah continued, her voice now carrying the authority of a judge delivering a verdict. "Ahmed, please tell Cristiano and our audience what you told me during our interview last week." Ahmed's voice was shaky but clear as he spoke. His English was accented, but every word cut through the air with precision. "Mr. Ronaldo, for 2 years, I helped prepare the reports for donors. For 2 years, I watched as money meant for children's hospitals in Portugal was transferred to accounts in Dubai and Switzerland. I watched as funds designated for schools were diverted to purchase luxury properties in Lisbon and London. The studio was deathly quiet now. Ronaldo's knuckles turned white as he gripped the arms of his chair. He couldn't breathe. Couldn't. Think. Ahmed continued, his voice growing stronger with every word. I have copies of the bank transfers, Mr. Ronaldo. I have emails where you personally approved moving money from the Children's Medical Fund to pay for your new house in Lisbon. I have recordings of phone calls where you laughed about these stupid Americans and Europeans who donate money without checking where it goes. Ronaldo's face was pale, and his mouth had gone dry. This is not true, he whispered, but his voice lacked conviction. His world was crumbling in front of millions of viewers, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Ahmed's voice continued, growing firmer with each passing second. Mr. Ronaldo, when I tried to speak up about what was happening, when I told you that children were dying because they couldn't afford treatments that our foundation was supposed to provide, do you remember what you told me? Ronaldo remained silent, staring at his hands. He couldn't meet Ahmed's eyes. You told me my job was to make the numbers work, not to worry about those people, Ahmed said, his voice rising with emotion. You said they should be grateful for whatever they got. And when I said I couldn't continue being part of this fraud, you didn't just fire me. You had me blacklisted from every NGO in Portugal. My wife lost her job because of your calls. My children couldn't even get into university because of you. The room hung in a heavy silence, the weight of the words hanging like a dark cloud over the studio. Oprah let the accusations sit for a moment, letting the full impact of the testimony sink in. Muhammad, Oprah finally spoke, her tone colder than ever. Would you like to respond to Ahmed's specific allegations? For the first time, Ronaldo's face betrayed something rougher. It was a side of him the world had never seen before. He was a man who had been untouchable, a football god. Now, he was cornered, unable to deny the growing storm surrounding him. This is being taken out of context, he stammered, his voice cracking with desperation. Ahmed, you know how foundations work. There are administrative costs, legal requirements. The money wasn't stolen. It was managed according to proper procedures. Oprah raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. Proper procedures? She asked, cutting through his words. Let me share some of these proper procedures with our audience. Oprah opened a thick stack of documents and began reading. According to records from the Central Bank of Portugal, your foundation received $12.3 million in donations between 2018 and 2023. Of that amount, $3.2 million went to actual charitable programs. Another $2.1 million went to what you called administrative costs that included a $400 zero luxury car for yourself, to $100,000 for security consulting from a company owned by your brother, and $150,000 for a cultural exchange program. That consisted of a family vacation to the Maldives. Ronaldo's face twisted in horror as Oprah turned the page, unfazed by his growing distress. But the most interesting expense, Mr. Ronaldo, is the $1.8 million that went to a company called Pyramid Holdings Limited, registered in the British Virgin Islands. Would you like to guess who owns Pyramid Holdings Limited? Ronaldo's breath hitched, sweat running down his forehead as his mind raced. He was trapped, and he knew it. He could feel his empire falling apart, piece by piece. Oprah leaned forward, her voice like ice. You own Pyramid Holdings Limited. You've been paying yourself almost $2 million to manage facilities that don't exist, for programs that were never implemented, to help children who never received the aid that was promised in your name. The audience murmured with disbelief, some shaking their heads in disgust. Ronaldo looked like a man who had just been exposed in the worst possible way. He could barely speak, his words coming out as weak whispers. The foundation operates under Portuguese law, Ronaldo muttered, trying to cling to any shred of defense. All expenses are legally justified. Legally justified, Oprah interrupted, cutting him off once again. You've been paying yourself millions while children in need went without. You've been exploiting the public's trust to enrich yourself, and your charity has been nothing but a smokescreen. The murmurs in the audience grew louder, and Ronaldo's face turned pale. His carefully constructed world, the perfect image of the humble footballer and philanthropist, was crumbling in real time. But Oprah wasn't finished. Let's talk about the Swan incident. The words hit like a thunderclap. Ahmed's composure faltered as he wiped away tears. There were 43 children in a rural clinic outside Aswan, he said, his voice choked with emotion. They needed surgery, medication, proper nutrition. The local doctor reached out to your foundation because he heard about your medical program. We had the money, $200,000 in the medical emergency fund that month. But you had just bought a new apartment in Lisbon, and the down payment emptied the medical fund. Ahmed paused, tears streaming down his face as the audience watched in stunned silence. When I told Mr. Ronaldo about the children, he said they would have to wait until the next donation cycle. By the time the money was available again, 11 children had died. Ronaldo's face drained of color. His world was unraveling, and, for the first time, he couldn't hide from it. No, he whispered. No, this isn't true. 11 children, Cristiano, Oprah said coldly, her voice rising over the noise. 11 children died while the money that could have saved them was being used to furnish your new luxury apartment in Lisbon. The room erupted in anger. Several audience members stood up, shouting in disbelief. Security guards rushed forward, but the tension was thick. Ronaldo's carefully crafted image had been obliterated in front of millions of viewers. Tears welled up in Ronaldo's eyes, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were the tears of a man whose world had come crashing down. His hands trembled as he tried to regain control. But the damage had been done. You don't understand, he sobbed, his voice breaking. The pressure, the expectations. Everyone wants something from you when you're successful. I had obligations. People were depending on me. Children were depending on you too. Oprah said sharply, her words cutting through his cries. Dead children. The audience was now in open revolt, shouting in multiple languages. The studio was a storm of emotion, but Oprah, unflinching, reached for another folder. Oprah continued, her calm demeanor in stark contrast to the chaos around her, as if the foundation's scandal wasn't enough. Let's talk about your other business ventures in Portugal, specifically your hotel chain and construction company. A young woman in her 20s stood up from the audience, visibly shaking. Farah Mahmood, dressed in worn clothes that had been patched up, looked terrified. Farah worked as housekeeping staff at one of your hotels in Algarve for 18 months, Oprah explained, her tone shifting slightly, though still piercing. Farah, please tell Cristiano and our audience what your working conditions were like. Farah's voice trembled as she spoke, tears streaming down her face. I worked 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, no sick days, no vacation days. When I got pregnant, they made me work until the day before I gave birth. When I came back after 1 week, they called me lazy for taking time off. Her voice grew stronger as she continued. My salary was supposed to be €2,000 per month, but they paid me only 600. When I asked why, they said room and board were deducted. But the room was a concrete box shared with 6 other girls, and the food was scraps from the hotel restaurant. Oprah didn't let up. And when you tried to organize with other workers, Farah, they fired 5 girls who signed our letter asking for fair wages. Farah whispered through her tears. The manager said Cristiano Ronaldo himself had ordered it. He said we were ungrateful peasants who should be thankful to work for a famous person. They blacklisted us so we couldn't work anywhere in the Red Sea tourism industry. Ronaldo, now visibly shaking, tried to interrupt, his voice weak. This is not true. I don't manage the day-to-day operations. If these things happened, I wasn't aware. Oprah was unmoved, her voice cold as she pulled out another recording device. Let's listen to your conversation with your hotel manager from March 15th of last year. Ronaldo's face twisted in panic as Oprah hit play. His voice, unmistakable despite the Arabic, filled the studio. These workers think they can organize? Fire the troublemakers immediately. Make an example of them, so the others understand who they're working for. If they don't like it, they can go back to their villages and farm dirt. The audience gasped audibly, several people standing up and shouting. Farah was sobbing uncontrollably, her body trembling with anger. Farah's sister worked at your Sharm el-Sheikh property. Oprah continued, pushing forward with unrelenting force. When she complained about being forced to work during Ramadan without time for prayers, they fired her too. She has 3 children, Mr. Ronaldo. 3 children who went hungry because you wanted to punish her for asking to practice her religion. Ronaldo's face was pale, his hands trembling as he clutched the arms of his chair. This is taken out of context, he protested weakly. In business, you have to make difficult decisions. The tourism industry in Egypt is competitive. Oprah raised her voice. For the first time in the interview, competitive, Mahmoud elsed. Please stand. A middle-aged man in construction. Clothes, his right arm missing below the elbow, rose from the back of the audience. His face was scarred, and the audience could see the anger simmering beneath his composed exterior. Mahmoud worked on one of your resort construction projects in Soma Bay, Oprah said. Her voice as hard as steel. Mahmoud, tell us what happened on July 23, 2022. Mahmoud's voice was steady, though laced with quiet rage. We had warned the site supervisor for weeks. The scaffolding was unsafe. The materials were cheap knockoffs. We said people would get hurt. The supervisor told us Mr. Ronaldo's orders were to finish on schedule, no matter what. Mahmoud lifted his missing arm, his eyes locking with Ronaldo's. The scaffolding collapsed during the morning shift. I lost my arm. My friend Khalid lost his life. He had 4 children. The studio fell utterly silent. Mahmoud continued after the accident. Mr. Ronaldo's lawyers came to see me in the hospital. They offered me money to sign papers saying it was my fault, saying I had been drinking, not following safety protocols. When I refused, they threatened to sue my family for the cost of medical treatment. That's not true, Ronaldo whispered, his voice barely audible. But the weight of his denial seemed insignificant in the face of the evidence piling up against him. I have the documents, Mahmoud said, pulling them from his jacket. I have the papers your lawyers tried to make me sign. I have recordings of their threats, and I have this. He held up a photograph of a man in construction clothes, smiling and holding a young child. This is Khalid on his last birthday. His son is now on my construction crew because his family couldn't afford school after Khalid died. His son is 14 years old, Mr. Ronaldo. 14? The audience erupted in outrage. Several people rushed toward the stage, security scrambling to maintain order. The anger in the room was palpable, but Oprah remained calm, her voice cutting through the chaos. The recordings continued to play, each one stripping away more of Ronaldo's carefully built image. One by one, former business partners, journalists, workers, and victims of his exploitation came forward with their stories. They spoke of betrayal, manipulation, and greed, each testimony chipping away at the facade of the once beloved superstar. As Ronaldo shrank further into his seat, his responses became more desperate and incoherent. These people are lying. Someone is paying them to lie. This is all a conspiracy against me. Oprah's voice cut through the hysteria. Because you're a fraud. The word hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Ronaldo sat there, broken. His empire of fame, wealth, and adoration had come crumbling down in front of millions. Oprah's gaze softened, but her words remained sharp. Let me ask you something directly. Do you remember signing a contract with Global Sports Marketing? In 2019, Ronaldo's eyes widened. This was a question he wasn't prepared for. Oprah held up the contract, a thick document. Your entire public persona, the humble, charitable icon, was created and maintained through this contract. You even had clauses about your donations, not for their good, but for the PR value. And when those donations became inconvenient for your cash flow, you found ways to redirect the money back to yourself. Ronaldo was on the edge, tears streaming down his face. His image, his reputation, his entire career was collapsing before him. Oprah's voice softened just slightly, a note of genuine sadness entering her tone. The worst part, Cristiano, is what you've done to the dreams of millions of children who believed in you. Do you have any idea how many boys in Portugal, in Africa, all around the world have your poster on their walls? How many of them went to sleep thinking that if they worked hard and stayed humble like Cristiano Ronaldo, they too could achieve their dreams? She turned to the audience. Look around this room, Cristiano. These are real people. They believed in you. They trusted you. The camera panned across the audience, capturing the faces of disappointment, anger, and sadness. Oprah turned back to Ronaldo, asking one final question. Are you sorry, Ronaldo? Broken. Looked up at her, his face streaked with tears. His voice barely a whisper. I became someone I never wanted to be. The money, the fame, the pressure. I lost myself. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry you did it. Or sorry you got caught. Oprah's voice was sharp. Ronaldo buried his face in his hands, unable to answer. Oprah turned to the camera. Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes the most important conversations are the most difficult ones. Today, we've seen what happens when we put our faith in heroes without truly looking at their humanity. When we return, we'll discuss how communities can recover from betrayal and how we can build better systems of accountability. As the show cut to commercial, the studio was left in stunned silence. Cristiano Ronaldo, once the pride of Portugal, now sat broken, his empire of fame and fortune shattered in 30 devastating minutes. The myth of the humble superstar was obliterated, leaving behind only the uncomfortable truth that sometimes our heroes are simply humans who got lost in their own success. In living rooms around the world, children stared at their Ronaldo jerseys, wondering if heroes were ever real at all. And in that Chicago studio, surrounded by the wreckage of his reputation, Ronaldo learned that some goals, once scored against you, can never be taken back.